Happy Friday, everybody, and thanks for joining the cloud reporting webinar today. We're going to get started very shortly, but while we wait for those to log on, we've invited Derek Eklund from Foundation, and that's our parent company, and he's going to just talk a couple minutes and share some really cool product news. Derek, take it away.
Hey, thanks, Tammy. Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, I won't take up too much of your time, everybody. I just wanted to talk a little bit about, like Tammy mentioned, just some of the additional products that we offer that are under the Foundation umbrella. And for those of you that aren't aware, the flagship product for Foundation is an accounting job costing system, and the product that I have pulled up on my system would be another product that basically integrates and works with that, which is called Foundation's Project HQ, which is a web-based project management platform. The idea is this is where you would be able to create, manage, store, all different types of job and project correspondence from the main screen here, which would be more of an overview where you can see your most recent projects, different documents. There's even a scheduling aspect to this. There's a section where you can keep track of action items, kind of like activities on the project. And this is all, being web-based, is designed to be used on the go. So you don't have to be constrained to a computer in an office. You can run this on a tablet, on the job site, on the go, and it allows everybody to kind of keep in touch with project information. And I guess more specifically, and I won't get too in the weeds here this afternoon, but the types of things you can get into here would be daily logs, AIA billings, RFIs and submittals. You could even create your own user-defined documents, punch lists, change order management, which is always a big one. There is an area right above that where you can kind of look at overall budget breakdown, so you'd be able to kind of keep tabs on that. Your different codes and classes and dollars and quantities and hours. There's also a section where you can create and manage different commitments, so your purchase orders, your subcontracts. And I mentioned being able to not only create these documents, and you can also create your own custom documents, but email integration, file storage, like this area here is where you can upload and store unlimited drawings and pictures. And there is a markup and annotation feature. That's where that little pen right there is. So if you want to see different versions, you can kind of keep track on who made changes or who made edits. But there's a whole document storage part of the platform. But if you have any interest or questions on our Project HQ platform, feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to kind of go over questions or even set up a time to kind of go through this from start to finish with your team. And with that said, I'll hand it back over to Tammy, and then we'll get going on with the main presentation here.
Thanks so much, Derek. So today's session will be recorded, and within a day, you will receive an email from GoToWebinar with the recording. Sometimes if you don't receive it, it does go into your junk or spam. So just FYI on that. Or you could go to our YouTube playlist. All lines are muted today, and we definitely want you to ask all the questions you have. And to ask those questions, just use the questions window. And then lastly, we have a survey at the very end of this webinar, and a window's gonna pop up with 4 questions. And really, we want to know what type of content you want for next year, because we're gonna start building out the schedule for next year's free webinars. So please put your comments in there, because we take those very seriously, and I really go through those and kind of make sure that we're covering everything all the users want. So with that, let's get started. Thanks for joining, Ruben. It's all yours.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ruben, and I'm going to be guiding you through today's webinar on cloud reports. I'm hoping that everyone can see my screen. I think it looks like everyone can. For those who don't know, cloud reports refer simply to the reports accessed through the admin portal. There are a few advantages to using cloud reports. One of the bigger ones is not needing to check out a license. As edge users already know, a license must be checked out in order to use the Edge Estimator software. However, as long as one is set up as a user, they can log into the portal whether a license is available or not. What that means is while your estimators may have all the licenses checked out, you can still have your project managers access the reports they need through the admin portal. Another one of the big advantages to using cloud reports is cloud reports give you the ability to filter out your reports through cost types, user codes, and account codes. One of the bigger reasons we are doing a webinar on cloud reports now is we have recently changed the engine we use to generate cloud reports. While the previous engine did have its advantages, I personally find the user interface for this new engine to be a lot more intuitive and a lot more user-friendly. This webinar is going to be a little different compared to our previous webinars, mainly in terms of the length. This webinar will be running closer to about an hour. However, for that very reason, I have separated this webinar into two halves or two sections. During the first section of this webinar, I'll be covering the more basics of cloud reports. This will take roughly 15 to 30 minutes. And during this section, I'm going to talk about how to get to cloud reports and all the functionalities of the different icons on the cloud reports homepage. During the second section of this webinar, or the more intermediate level, I will be diving a little more in depth on how to make a custom report. This will take closer to also 15 to 30 minutes, of which I will be talking about how all cloud reports are designed and some of the ways to make changes to a custom report. And then I will be showing a custom report I have made, going through all the changes that I have applied. For those who do not believe they will need to make a more custom detailed report, you can feel free to leave after I've covered the first section of this webinar. I will also stop myself and mention that I have concluded the first section of the webinar, and I'll be moving more to the intermediate level. So let's get right into it. There are a couple ways to get to the admin portal, which is where cloud reports are. The first way is to open up a web browser of your choice. Once you do so, you're going to want to type in this URL up at the top, admin.edgeestimator.com. Once you do so, it should bring you to this login page. The info you're going to type in here is the same info you use to log into the Edge Estimator software. Once you type that in, you're going to want to click the login button. Doing so should bring you to the Bids Manager page within the admin portal. There are a couple ways to get to cloud reports from here. One of the more intuitive ways that I personally find is to first look for the name of your bid. If you do not see the name of your bid from this initial list, you could always use this search bar here up top, or you can refer to one of these tabs we have up here. Once you find the name of your bid, you're going to want to mouse over it like so and click on it once. Doing so should bring you to the list of scenarios within that bid. From here, you're going to want to move your mouse to the right until you see this 3-dotted button. Specifically, to the right of the name of the scenario that you want to see a report on. If you click on that 3-dotted button once, you'll get this drop down, and you're going to want to click the View Reports. Once you do so, you should be in a new tab, and you should be on the Cloud Reports homepage. Notice in blue text up here, it says the name of the bid and the name of the scenario that you have selected. You can also change the bid and or scenario that you're working from by clicking on this blue text. This window will pop up here in the middle. If you want to change the bid that you are working from, you're going to want to move to this first field labeled Select a Bid. Click on it once, and you will get a drop-down list with the name of all your bids. You could, of course, also type in this field, and it will filter out that list. You can then select the bid by clicking on it once. Same goes for scenarios. If you move to the field labeled Select the Scenario and click on the field once, you'll get a list of scenarios within that bid. If you want to view a report only on a specific bid zone within your scenario, you can move over to the field labeled Select a Bid Zone. Click on it once. You will also get the list of bid zones within your bid. That also goes for change orders. If I swap to a scenario that is activated, that has been activated for change orders, like this one here, if I click on the field labeled Select a Change Order, I will get a list of change orders if that is what I want to review my report on. I can also filter out my report to show only specific pages by using these fields down here. For demonstration purposes, we're going to keep it rather simple. This is the bid I'm going to work from, and I'm going to swap back to my main bid scenario. I'm going to make no other further selections here, and I'm going to click OK in the bottom right. Now, let's talk about common reports. For the most part, common reports are the same reports that can be found within the Edge Estimator software. That is why if you look at the names of these common reports, some of them should sound familiar to you depending on which reports your companies utilize. We do also have some reports, some unique reports that can only be found within the admin portal, such as this drill down reports. For this webinar, I will not be covering what they entail. I'm going to now talk about the icons and specifically what they do for common reports. I'm going to be referring to my consolidated reports. If I move over to this leftmost icon here, this is how I preview a report. If I click on it once, I will be put in a new tab with a preview of my consolidated report. Going back to the Cloud Reports homepage, if I move to the rightmost icon, this is how I can download that report. To the left of that is the Report Filters icon. This icon is useful if I want to filter out my reports to show only certain cost types. If I click on it once, I'll get this window here in the middle that allows me to make those cost type selections. If I want to view only material on my consolidated reports, I can mouse over the other cost types that I don't want to see, click on them once, and notice they are now unselected. Then I can move over to the Save button in the bottom right to save those changes. If I now hover over my Report Filters button, it now says filters are enabled. Now, if I go over and I preview my consolidated report with those filters, I now get a much shorter consolidated report. Notice the user codes are only referring to material. I'm going to close out of this. I'm going to close out of that as well. There is a slight inconvenience with getting a material-only consolidated report through this method. The reason being, if I want to view a consolidated report in the future on a different bid, I will still only get material. This can be an inconvenience if I now need to see a normal consolidated report with all my cost types. There's a very simple way to fix this, but I'm going to come back to that. I'm going to quickly pass over this copy report icon. I'm going to talk about this Open with Runtime icon. This icon is useful if I want to filter my bid out even further. If I click on it once, I get this window here in the middle. To start the filter process, I want to mouse over this new filter button. When I click on it, I get these fields here. You want to always start from the top left field. If you click on it once, you'll get a drop-down list with all the different options you can filter out your bid by. Notably, account codes and user codes, as I mentioned in the beginning. Let's say I want to filter out my bid by a specific user code. Let's say that user code is SM material or sheet metal material. I'm first going to select user code from that drop-down list. I'm now going to move to this right field. Notice it says include. If I click on it, I have other options that I can select from, but I want it to include the user code that I'm going to look for. So I'm going to leave it like so. This is equal to is referring to the value that I'm going to put within this field, or in this case, once again, my user code. I'm going to set it to is equal to, or leave it as so, because I want it to equal the value I'm going to input here. Now, if I move to this field and I click on it once, I get a list of user codes that I can pick from. If I want my SM material, I can move down and select that user code. Once I click on it, I get a confirmation that it has been selected here in the middle. I could also select multiple user codes. So if I click on the field once more and I move up to my roofing material user code, I can select that one as well. If I need to remove that option, I can always move over to this X button and click on it. Now with my filter set up properly here, I'm going to move down and I'm going to click open. Doing so will now give me that consolidated report that is significantly shorter, as it is only showing the material referring to the SM material user code or sheet metal material. I'm going to close out of this. I'm going to close out of this as well. And I'm going to talk about that inconvenience that I mentioned earlier. So, excuse me. To get around this inconvenience, I'm going to first select the report filters icon. Once I click on it, I'm going to customize this consolidated report so that it shows all cost types, so that when I click on it again in the future, it's a regular consolidated report. And I'm going to hit save. Now, this is where the copy report icon comes in handy. If I click on that once, I can begin the process to make my material only consolidated report. I get this window here in the middle. I first need to rename the reports. You cannot have a report with the same name. That is why it throws the 1 at the end. In this case, this is actually a consolidated report with only material. And I'm going to very quickly make those cost type selections. So I'm going to once again uncheck all other cost types, leave material check marked, and click and I'm going to also quickly throw in 01 space dash. The reason I did that was because custom reports are organized in alphanumerical order. So this will make it so that this report shows up at the very top of the list. Now if I click copy, I now get that consolidated report. Notice if I hover over once again, my report filters, it says filters are enabled. The icons for custom reports work just a tad bit differently. First off, I'm going to refer to you to this download report button when you need to download or preview a custom report. The reason for that is if I move to this open icon and I click on it, which initially for common reports previews the report, it brings you to another view. Notice I'm now in a new tab. And I am now in this custom report editor view. This concludes the first section or basic level of cloud reports. For those who are leaving at this point, thank you for watching. Once again, GoToWebinar will send you an email with the recording of the webinar, and it will also be available on our YouTube channel. When you leave, you will see a 4-question survey. Once again, we use these surveys to help shape the content and improve the experience for future webinars. For those who are continuing to watch, I thank you for your patience. Let's now dive deeper into how cloud reports are designed. First off, all cloud reports are made of 2 things: text boxes and bands. Text boxes serve 2 simple purposes. The first one is to grab info from your bid and display it on your reports. That is why you see this code within these text boxes. I should quickly point out there are a total of 6 text boxes here that are located within this page header band. The other purpose, the text boxes, if you move over to the right here, is to take information that you can type in and display it on your report. If I want to change what a text box contains, I can double click on it. Notice I am now in the expression tab. I can change what's being typed in this text box by clicking once in this field here. In this case, my report name no longer works because this is actually a consolidated report, once again, with only material. I can then mouse over and click OK to save those changes. Notice the text box now reflects the changes that I have made. So those are the main purposes of text boxes. Let's now talk about bands. Bands have a few functionalities to them. One of the simpler ones is to take the text boxes that are located within them and put them in certain sections of our report. This page header band is taking these 6 text boxes and throwing them at the very top of our reports, hence the name page header band. If we move down to these group header bands, as the name suggests, it is grouping data coming from our bid, referring specifically to this group header band 1. This band is grouping all the items, or in this particular report, because this is a material only report, grouping all of my materials. Just like in the edge, though you may have the same material coming out of multiple conditions, when you get to your material pricing screen, you only ever see one line representing the combined quantity for that material. This group header band is doing exactly that. It's taking the material, and on our report, it's displaying one line with the combined quantity. If you move up to group header band 2, it is now taking those materials and grouping them by user code. And lastly, group header band 3 is grouping them by subdivision. I'm now going to move up to this preview button here in the top left. This is how I can preview what my custom report is doing. If I click on it once, I get that preview, and I'm going to give you a more visual representation of what the bands are doing. Up at the top, notice there that are being thrown at the top of the reports due to the page header band. Moving down, we can see what my 3 group header bands are doing. Once again, the group header band 1 is grouping all of my materials. So if you scroll down here, all of these materials should have unique names. It is then taking them and grouping them first by subdivision, then by user code. In this case, since I only have one subdivision, no matter how far down I scroll, it'll always be the same subdivision. However, the user code will eventually change, like so. And the material listed under here is referring to this user code. These totals here, these are actually coming from footer bands. There are 2 types of footer bands that this report's utilizing. This is coming from a group footer band, and this is coming from a regular footer band. I'm going to move up to the home button here in the top left. This is how you get back to your custom report editor view. I'm going to click on it, and here are my footer bands. Each of your footer bands are attached to a header bands. Each of your, specifically, your group footer bands are attached to your group header band. You want to think of them, if you work from the middle of reports and you work your way out, each header band is attached to a group footer band. If you look at your group footer band 2, notice it is displaying a total. As for which total it's displaying, if I work up to my group header bands, it is displaying the total for group header band 2. It is always attached to the footer bands are always attached to the header band directly opposite to it. So this group footer band 2 is actually grabbing the total for my user codes. And the reason for that is, once again, the group header band 2 is grouping my material by user code. Same goes for group footer band 3. This one is representing the total for my subdivision because it is attached to the group header band 3 that's grouping by subdivision. This bottom footer band is representing the total for my job. And it is specifically a regular footer band and not a group footer band. And that is because I do not want this footer band attached to any of my groups. So now that I've talked about what text boxes and bands are, I'm going to cover a simple but useful change you can make to a report. Some people like to be able to see the gross price in addition to the net costs on their reports. So to first do that, I have to make space here on the right for another column. All of these text boxes and bands can be moved and resized. To do so, you're going to want to click on the text box, like so. Notice it puts these gray text boxes around, indicating that it's been selected. If I click, hold, and drag my mouse while it's selected, I can move it around. In order to resize it, if I move my mouse over to the right side of the box, notice my cursor changes as I mouse over the gray square. If I click, hold, and drag, I can move it to the left and right to resize the text box. Just quickly resize this here. I, of course, need to resize the text box that's underneath it, as these two are related to each other. So I can click on this text box once, move over to the right once again. My mouse cursor changes, click, hold, and drag. And I have successfully resized that text box as well. You can also do multiple at once. In order to do that, you want to select the first box that you want to move or resize. And then while holding Control on your keyboard, you can select another text box. Notice it puts this gray border around both of those text boxes. So now if I mouse over until my cursor changes, if I click, hold, and drag now, I'm now resizing both of them at once. So now I'm going to use that, and I'm going to actually resize all these text boxes at once. So first, I'm going to change the size for these text boxes here back to their original size. So I'm going to click on this one once again, holding Control and selecting that one. And I'm going to drag it back over. Now I'm going to click on this text box once, hold Control, and select all these other text boxes by also clicking on them. Notice I have this border now around this entire selection. So if I mouse over to the right, my cursor changes once again. And if I click, hold, and drag the left to right, it will resize all those text boxes proportionately. I'm going to quickly move these text boxes around because it shuffled them around a little bit. So I'm going to click away from that by clicking on another text box. Then I'm going to select the text box I need to move by clicking on it. And then once again, click, hold, and drag, and that looks better. I'm now going to do the same thing, except for the next 3 lines. So I'm just going to quickly, once again, click on this one once, hold Control, select the rest of them as well. Move my mouse to the right, my cursor changes, click, hold, and drag. Oops, and then I'm going to move this one back over. Then I'm gonna do the same, like I said, for the bottom 3. I have now made enough space for that new column that I'm going to put with gross price. There are a couple ways to insert a new text box. One of the ways is if you move your mouse over to this Insert tab here on the top left, and you click on it, the options change here. Notice I have the option to also put in a group header, group footer, and there's my regular header and regular footer. In this case, I need a new text box. So I'm going to click on it once. Notice it is now highlighted, indicating that it's been selected. If I move my mouse down, notice my cursor changes, and I can now draw out that text box by clicking and holding my mouse and dragging it. Notice I am now sizing up that text box. And once I let go of my mouse, it makes that text box. This window here pops up in the middle because it's asking what I want in this text box. In this case, it needs to be gross price. So I clicked on it to type in here. Now I can type in gross price and click OK. The issue with making a text box this way is notice the formatting for this text box is very different. So I would have to reformat this text box if I wanted to match the formatting of my report. So the more intuitive way in this case to make a text box is first, I'm going to delete this text box that I made. Notice it's selected. So I'm going to hit delete on my keyboard to get rid of it. I'm going to click once on the text box that I need the formatting from. Now I'm going to hold Control on my keyboard once again, click, hold, and drag, and notice it makes a copy of that text box. If I let go of both my mouse and my keyboard, I get that text box. And I can, of course, resize it to make it fit a little bit better. Now, in this case, I do need it to say gross price. So I'm going to double click the text box once more, get rid of that net cost, and type in gross price. And I'm going to click OK. I also need, of course, the text boxes that actually represent the values. So I'm going to click once on the text box I need to copy once again, hold Control on my keyboard, click, hold, and drag, and get a copy of that text box. In this case, however, it is a little tricky because I need to change the value or the code that is within this text box. You still double click the text box to change what's in it, but you are now in the data column tab. This is the tab you want to be in when you're looking for values that you want to grab from the edge. Notice it has net cost selected. And if I move up, there's my gross price option. I can select it by double clicking on it. I'm going to expand this text box real fast. I'm going to point out, I'm going to drag it to the bottom a little bit. Notice it says calculated. I'll show you why it says calculated. If I double click on the text box again, once again in my data column, if I scroll all the way to the top, that is where the word calculated is coming from. These options are all within the calculated. And this is the option you want to go to whenever you need to see totals. I'm going to resize the text box and put it back. Now I'm just going to quickly do the same thing for the bottom three. So I'm going to click on it, hold Control, click, hold, and drag over, and then swap the code once again to gross price. Now I can simply make a copy of that text box, since it's the exact formatting I need, and drag it to the other two. I'm going to resize them a little bit. Now that I have made those changes, I'm going to move up to this preview button in the top left to look at what those changes look like. There's my column with gross price. If I scroll down, I eventually see the totals that I have created as well. I, of course, could make the report look a little nicer by resizing them as needed. I'm going to go back to the custom report editor view, once again by clicking the home button. In order to save the changes you make to a report, you want to go up to this top left, and you want to click on the floppy disk icon in order to save. However, if you try and close out the report without saving it, I have not clicked the button. I'm going to try to close out by hitting the X button on this tab. It's going to ask, are you sure you want to leave? The information you entered may not be saved. What it's warning you is that you did not save the report. So when you try and close out a report and you didn't save, you'll get this window here in the middle. So I'm now going to click on Stay on Page, move up to the left, and click Save. Now, if I close out of this tab, I won't get that warning, and it'll let me leave. Now, I'm going to briefly go through a custom report that I have made for this webinar, and that's this report here. If you look at the name of the report, you can kind of guess on what's happening here. This was originally a consolidated report, so I made a copy of the consolidated report. If I click the Open button to preview this report, I'm going to move directly to the Preview button and show the changes that I have made to this report. This report represents a lot of what you can customize using cloud reports. First thing I'll point out is notice how there's no more borders here. That is because I have removed the borders around all of my text boxes, with the exception of these top text boxes. I've also changed the color and font style, of some of these text boxes. The original consolidated report, compared to the original consolidated report, notice this one is now divided up even further. As the name suggests, it is divided first by sections, then by pages. So this material list here is now no longer just referring to the roofing material user code. it is referring specifically to the roofing material the material under this section, and specifically this page within the section. I have taken my bid and I have separated the bid by buildings in sections and by roofing systems in pages. Notice if I scroll down, eventually I think about page 11. I'm on page 8. The page changes. This material is now referring to this page within this section. And if I scroll down to about the middle of the reports, I have also made a line that represents the total for this section, or in this case, building 1. And then if I scroll down to the very bottom, I have another line for building 2, along with my subdivision and job total. A lot of the customization I've done here, such as dividing my report by sections and pages, is only possible through Cloud Reports. So what are the main points or takeaways I want you to have learned from this webinar? Well, the main takeaways include, first off, how to get to Cloud Reports, the multiple ways you can filter out of reports, how to make a copy of a common report, and how all Cloud Reports are simply made up of bands and text boxes. This concludes my webinar on Cloud Reports. Once again, thank you for joining. A recording will be sent out to you from GoToWebinar, which will also be posted on the YouTube channel. A quick reminder that we offer in-depth or customized paid training if you need additional help. There is also a download for that flyer in the handout section. When you leave, a short survey will pop up, and we encourage you once again to please fill it out, as we use this feedback to shape future webinars, as well as determine topics for upcoming webinars. If you had a question that did not get answered, I apologize for the inconvenience, but feel free to log a support case and someone will reach out to you. I'm going to hand it back to Tammy.
Thanks, Ruben. Happy Friday, everybody. And let us know if you have any questions. Thanks again for joining.